Good morning, Year 6. I hope you're all okay and that you've enjoyed your Christmas holidays, and I hope that you're ready to get on with some fantastic home learning this week. Because it's a new term, we are going to start our new topic, which is World War II. And that means in English, our book to start with is going to be Good Night, Mr. Tom. Now, if you've heard of this book before, brilliant. But if you haven't, then don't worry, because we will look at it a little bit today. There are a few things that you're going to need for this lesson, so make sure you have a pen or a pencil and some paper. We should have included a YouTube link sent in our email to you that will have a link to take you to the film of Good Night, Mr. Tom. And you should have a copy of pages 2 to 5 of Good Night, Mr. Tom. But if you don't have that, don't worry, because I know that Mrs. Giff has recorded herself reading the first chapter of the book to you. So if you want to use that instead, then that's fine. But if you have a printed copy of the text, then that's brilliant as well, because you could be a bit like me and highlight the things that are important and that we're going to look at in a little bit. So pause the video, make sure that you have everything that you need, and you are ready to start our learning. So to just give you a quick overview about what Good Night, Mr. Tom is about, if you haven't listened to Mrs. Giff's reading of the chapter yet, or you haven't watched the film, or you haven't read the book, it's about a young boy called William, or Willie, and he lives in London, and he is evacuated to the countryside, and he moves in with Mr. Tom. Mr. Tom can be a bit of a grumpy old man, so he's a bit unsure about Willie coming to stay with him to start with, but then as the story goes on, we learn about their relationship and what they go through together. Okay, so make sure you've got all of the things that you need. We're going to have a little look at the video link that we sent you first. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to load up the link provided, and it's going to be quite tricky because obviously you've got to click on it like this, okay? But then I want you, when you press play, to close your eyes and listen to the first 40 seconds or so of the film, okay? You can open your eyes obviously when you think you've got to 40 seconds, but if you're not sure, then that's fine. Just do the best you can, okay? So you just need to listen to the first 40 seconds of the film, and I want you to think about what images it creates in your head. Okay, what do you imagine is on the screen? How does it make you feel? Does it make you feel quite relaxed? Does it set you on edge a little bit? What are your thoughts and feelings as you listen and listening with your ears to the first 40 seconds or so of the film? So pause the video now and have a go at listening to the first 40 seconds of the film, and you might want to make a few notes about your thoughts and your feelings and what you imagine on the screen for the first part of the film. Off you go, team. Okay, I know you can't tell, but I've listened to that, and in my head, you might think differently, and that's okay. I think that it sounds like it's going to be somewhere that's quite remote, because I can hear the birds singing. I think it might be somewhere that's quite peaceful because I can hear the birds singing. I can't hear the rush of traffic or any cars or anything like that. So I think it's going to be somewhere quite calm and peaceful. Now, you can play the first 40 seconds of the film again, but this time I want you to watch it. Open your eyes and see what's on the screen, because I'd like you to think about the similarities and differences between what you imagined and what is actually on the screen. Is there anything that you got right? Is there anything that you saw on the screen that you didn't expect to see? Make a note of them, make sure you send them to the email and let us know what you thought, okay? Have a go at doing that for me now. Pause the video and have a watch of the first 40 seconds of the film and think about any similarities and differences between what you thought about and what is actually on the screen. Okay, team, good job, well done. So, now, what you need next is you still need your pen and paper, okay? You'll need the description of the house from the book. So that's pages 2 to 5 of the book, and you should be able to find a copy of those on the school website or in the email. Or if you can't access that, don't worry, because Mrs. Giff will be reading this description in her reading from chapter 1. Okay, so if you can't access a copy of the text, make sure that you listen carefully to Mrs. Giff reading chapter 1, okay, and you can make notes from that. So, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the description of Tom's house, and we want to be thinking about what we find out about the house, the features of his house, what his house looks like, what's inside his house. Okay, so pause the video, listen to Mrs. Giff reading chapter 1, or if you've got a copy of the text in front of you, read through the copy, okay, and make a note or highlight, underline, whichever is suitable, anything that you can identify about Mr. Tom's house. Pause the video and have a go. Okay, team, so you might have found some more features than me. You might have found a few less than me. You might have found different ones to me, and that's okay. Just make sure you send your work in so that we can have a look at it together. Okay, so I found some features from Tom's house from the text. Okay, I'm going to go through a few of them and I'm going to tell you where I've got that from in the text. So, I know that Tom's house is near a church. In the text, on page 2, it says, "But," she continued, this is about halfway down, "his mother wants him to be with someone who's religious or near a church. She was quite adamant. She said he would only let him be evacuated if he was." So that means that because Willie has gone to live with Mr. Tom, it means that Mr. Tom must live near a church. I've also said that there's a large black cooking range. I've got that from the bottom of page 3. It says, "Through the half-open door, he could see a large black cooking range with a fire in it." Okay, and then if I continue reading that sentence, we find out that there's an old, threadbare armchair nearby. So near to the range, the big cooking range, is an old armchair. As I look further down, page 4, just after he walked back into the front room, we find out a little bit more about the front room in Mr. Tom's house. So, This is the last paragraph on page 4. It says, this is describing the living room or the front room. It was a small, comfortable room with 2 windows. So I've written that it's a small living room with 2 windows. I've got that directly from the text. The front one looked out onto the graveyard. Again, front window looks onto the graveyard. Got that directly from the text. The other to a little garden at the side. The second window looks to a little garden. Okay, so now I've got this picture in my head of a small living room, and if I looked out one of those windows, there would be a graveyard, and if I looked out another, I would see a small garden. Then, beneath the side window, so in my head, the side window is the second window. It might be different for you, okay? So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, beneath the side window were a few shelves filled with books. So underneath the window that looks onto a little garden, I imagine there being a little shelf that's filled with quite a few books. The text goes on to say, by the front window stood a heavy wooden table and 2 chairs. That tells me that there's a table and chairs by the front window. Going back to the text, the floor was covered in a faded crimson, green and brown rug. So I know that in Mr. Tom's house, there is a crimson, green and brown rug on the floor. I go back to the text. Willie glanced at the armchair by the range and the objects that lay on top of the small wooden table beside it. A pipe, a book and a baccy jar. That tells me that there's a table next to the armchair with a few possessions on it that I'm going to assume belong to Mr. Tom. If you found similar features to me, well done, brilliant. If you found different features to me, that's fantastic. Send them in. I'd love to know what you found. Okay. Now, your next job is to go back to the YouTube video. Okay, I'll load it up here so that you can see. And I want you to watch till about 8 minutes. Okay, so you're going to watch up until the point Willie's tucking in to what looks like some very delicious food. Okay. And while you're watching that, I want you to think about what you see of Mr. Tom's house. Can you see anything that was mentioned in the book? Can you see anything that wasn't mentioned in the book? It might be a good idea to watch that snippet a few times, okay, so that you can make plenty of notes about any similarities and differences that you find between the two. Okay, have a go at doing that now for me. Okay team, once you've had a watch of the next snippet of the film, make sure that you've made notes on what you notice about Mr. Tom's house, and then I want you to have a go at comparing the features that we found of Mr. Tom's house from the text and the features of Mr. Tom's house that you found from the film. Okay, what is similar between those 2 depictions of Mr. Tom's house? Is there anything that's the same, or is there anything that is similar? Okay, is there anything that's completely different? Is there something in the film that isn't mentioned in the book? Or is there something in the book that isn't picked up on in the film? I'd like you to draw a table like you can see on our smart notebook and make a note of the similarities and differences that you notice between the description of Mr. Tom's house in the book and in the film. Remember, the film you have access to, and so you also have access to the text and to Mrs. Gift reading the text. So make sure that you use them both as much as you need to when you're looking for the similarities and differences between the two descriptions of Mr. Tom's house. Okay? I can't wait for you to email in with your similarities and differences so that we can have a look at how you've got on and see if you've noticed any similarities and differences that we haven't noticed. Okay, so well done for working so hard. Make sure you have a go at finding the similarities and differences between the film and the book. Okay, and make sure that you get a grown-up to email those in to the Year 6 email address. Well done, Year 6. Keep up the hard work.